Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Market Close Report for Friday, the 8th of May. Well, ouch, what an ugly way to end what has been quite a volatile week for our share market. In fact, it ended up being our worst decline in about 7 weeks. The ASX 200 down 133 points, or 1.5% to 8,744. That means in one day, we've essentially wiped out almost the entirety of this week's improvement. So we've just managed to hang on to some gains over the week, though, up by around 1/5%. So we've ended 3 straight weeks of declines with a small gain over the week. Now, this entire week, though, has really been driven in large part by developments in and around the Middle East, both good and bad. So the declines today were largely due to the renewed hostilities with both the US and Iran exchanging fire in overnight trade. Now, this followed a 2.3% lift for the prior 2 sessions for our market, and that's when there was a bit of optimism that the ceasefire was holding, that tempers had cooled somewhat. So certainly markets are still being influenced by what we're seeing in and around the Middle East at the moment, and that's unlikely to change, even though there probably has been a bit of market fatigue as far as the news flow, which is ebbing and flowing from both positive to negative at the moment. So what we're seeing is today's decline marked the 11th fall in 14 trading days for our market. But this aside, it's been quite a busy week. We've had, of course, earlier in the week, the Reserve Bank raising interest rates for the 3rd time this year. That was for the 3rd consecutive interest rate meeting. Some signs perhaps that the Governor, Michelle Bullock, is happy to sit on the sidelines at least for a month or two before deciding what to do next. We'll also continue to see US earnings flow through, and we've had some pretty strong results coming through markets, and that's been one reason why the US share market has outperformed the ASX 200 here in Australia by about 10% over the past couple of months. It's because even though there are uncertainties linked to the Middle East, we're seeing US profit results coming in stronger than many had anticipated. And it's also been a massive week for profit results here locally from the major banks. In fact, we had 3 big banks out with their results. Very different situations as far as the market response, from NAB and Westpac missing expectations for the most part with their results earlier in the week. And then we also had Macquarie today coming out with its numbers, and for the most part, it seemed to please a bit more than the others. But looking at the sectors locally today, we've had really just the communication services sector lifting, and not by much, by around 0.25%. So 10 of 11 sectors were lower. About 8 in every 10 companies on the share market also went backwards today. And some pretty sizable declines as well for a few of the larger areas. So financials down more than 2.25%. That's our largest sector, of course. The materials down about 1%. The utilities fell by about 2%. Real estate, the interest rate sensitive area, also falling quite heavily. There were plenty of winners on the market today, though. One was Block Inc. This is the group that bought Afterpay a few years ago. It owns Cash App over in the US, and also payments business Square, which you'll often see accepting payments at retail stores, even here in Australia. So it's improved by about 5%, posted a 27% lift in first quarter profit. It raised its outlook for the year as well, and it even made mention of AI, basically saying that some of its success is due to AI-driven productivity improvement. Seems to be a bit of a buzzword, and that continues. News Corp 2.6% higher today. It released third quarter results, which seem to beat the market's expectations. Revenues up around 9%. Also said it's on track for a record year as well. This, of course, a group behind HarperCollins, Dow Jones, news media like the Wall Street Journal, the Times, the Daily Telegraph. So it had a pretty good day. REA Group, which it has a very sizable stake in, up around 1.4%. It also came out with some numbers today saying that it's had a 11% increase in revenue. REA, of course, the group behind realestate.com.au. So despite rising interest rates, which can certainly weigh on consumer confidence, they're still seeing listing numbers which are quite healthy in Sydney and Melbourne, their 2 big markets. And then Light & Wonder, the poker machine and gaming services company, 11.5% higher today. And this is despite receiving 5 price target cuts from brokers. Now, we've got to remember this follows 5 straight days of declines. Pretty sizable decline yesterday as well, when it fell short of expectations with its results on Thursday. Now, as far as the losers go today, we had Tabcorp 14.2% lower. The betting group also fell very heavily yesterday by more than 20%. So it's fallen something like 35% just this week. Now, it received a broker downgrade, a price target cut. News yesterday was that Austrac is evaluating its money laundering and terrorism finding countermeasures. Westpac, 4.8% lower. The reason for that, it's ex-dividend today, paying out a 77-cent per share div on the 26th of June. Macquarie Group released its full year results today. Yes, it fell 1.1%, but it actually outperformed its peers on the share market today at least. Now, it actually came in with its second biggest full year result on record, raised its final dividend as well by 30 cents a share to $4.20 per share, and profits were up about 30%. So it's around $500 million above what the market was expecting. One of the drivers was the fact that it sold a business division, or a business rather, called OnStream Meters platform, which tracks electricity and gas meters on behalf of energy providers. But another reason was the war in the Middle East. So this has really resulted in a boost in demand for risk management and hedging because of all the movements we're seeing in oil and gas prices. And also QBE Insurance down around 1.5%, but still outperforming its insurance peers today after coming out with a trading update. Now, looking forward from here, tonight we do have an update on jobs growth out of the United States. That always gets a bit of attention and is important for movements in interest rates as well. So that's going to be one to watch. But looking forward to next week, we've got the federal budget being handed down Tuesday night. Not typically a market moving event at all. In fact, markets tend to be pretty quiet in the lead up since it is handed down 7:30 p.m. Tuesday night, and then don't do too much as far as the response following this either. But there could be discussions around capital gains tax changes, so this will certainly get at least a bit more attention than usual. We also have ANZ trading ex-div at Monday. We've got CB out with a quarterly, and we've also got others out with some earnings like Aristocrat Leisure, GrainCorp and Xero. And then we've also got President Trump and President Xi expected to meet towards the tail end of next week as well. As far as currencies go, the Aussie dollar 72.2 US, also strengthened against most other currencies. Have a great evening, everyone. A fantastic weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week.